Right, let's try again, shall we? Right. Dee 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 dee. The internet can see you now. Right, so if I make that reference coupling done, no. I'll do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the British Darts Organisation, welcome to the 2016 Lakeside World Championships. It's day 4, here at the home of World Darts, the Lakeside! We now introduce to the stage the reigning Dutch Open champion, 3 times a Winmore World Master, 3 times the Lakeside World Champion, it's Wolfie Martin Adams! We now introduce a Lakeside World Championship and BDO World Trophy semi-finalist. He's the reigning Las Vegas Open champion. From Canada, it's the Silencer, Jeff Smith. All right.
Well, stars on the stage and stars off it. Check this out. John Wilson here for his 80th birthday today, and Heather Hall here for her 90th. That deserves a mention on national TV, doesn't it? Let's get the commentary box. Tony Green and Vassos Alexander.
Colin, yes, definitely deserves a mention, but here's the question, right then. Who do you fancy for this one? Martin Adams, I can hear you thinking, and yes, the 3 times champion is the number 2 seed this year, so he's throwing well. I can also tell you Wolfie's relaxed. We shared a joke backstage not 20 minutes ago, and of course Wolfie has all the Lakeside experience in the world. But Jeff Smith has something about him up on that stage. A semi-finalist on debut last year, and he was mighty impressive, averaging 92 in the prelim and hitting 64% of his doubles. England against Canada then for a place in the last 16. Honestly, this is anyone's, but we're expecting a high-quality darts match.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First set, first leg. Jeff to throw first. Game on.
So Jeff Smith of Canada gets us underway, and one thing is for certain, the silencer will not go quietly.
55.
Well, we saw how it performed last year, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot more this year.
Right, there we go. Let's try that then. Right. I'm not sure if my stream has been blocked because I was streaming stuff that I wasn't. So I'm going to do something else instead. And let's see if I can't play back some audio. No. Can I do... Right, if I drag that in... Go to my podcast folder. Let's just do a repeat of last week's. It's that moment where I've realised that I have not been organised and I've lost all my shows. Right, Microsoft HD2. Right, let's do a sound test, shall we? We're going to here. Bounces. Let's do that one. Why are my discs so slow? Ah! God damn it. Right, let's try. If I open that app up now. We need that on desktop 3. We need that on desktop 3 as well. Let's see what happens if I play. Of course, nothing's going to happen because I'm tired and I'm hungover and I can't find any of my samples. Why is nothing working? Why does Finder also insist that it wants to open up every single bloody folder as well? Ah. It's all down right now to this is becoming hard work. I realise I'm still streaming, and yeah. I realise I'm hungry now as well. Have I got any? Ah, yes, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to play some audio, wasn't I, before I got completely distracted in what I was doing. Let's go back into Mimo. I don't want to copy it into document, just play. So if I now drag that into there, set that live.
Right. Okay, hold on a sec. Open that up. I'm going to play this. And then I'm going to try and be really clever and duck the audio and then fade it back up because I have a new toy.
You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
Welcome to the Essential Apple Podcast, a show where we cover the last 7 to 10 days in the world of Apple news, reviews, rumours, roundup, gossip, tech, and, well, basically, anything else that catches our eye. This is the Essential Apple Podcast. And guess what? There's actually been some Apple stuff this week. And so for the third time, I'm going to try and crack this intro. This week, Apple released the iMac Pro, purchased Shazam. Yes, got it. Updated Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro and Motion. Patreon reversed course and apologised to its users. Disney bought most of Rupert Murdoch's empire, and the FFC voted to remove net neutrality rules within the US. And if that's not enough to get you ready for the week before Christmas, we're joined by David Nanian of Shirt Pocket Software, makers of the excellent Super Duper, which is one of those backup things that, as you all know, listeners, I love to use on a daily basis, almost. David, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
You can tell you've not been on this show before. That's never a question you ask me, because it's just a cacophony of disasters.
Well, but I've been listening to the intro a few times, so I think I have an idea.
Yeah. It doesn't get any better. That was it. This is the pinnacle. Where are you joining us from in this here world of ours?
I am 12 miles outside of Boston, Massachusetts, in the U.S. So it's here where we park our cars and stuff.
Oh, and is that Jersey Shore? Are you responsible for that?
I am not responsible for the shore. No, we're inland.
Mob. Oh, blimey! What is going on with me today?
Coffee.
No, I know what it is. I'm sobering up. That's where it's all going on. And you're the maker of the rather excellent Shirt Pocket, the Super Duper clone thingy that I need to be using. Also joining us this week is Simon, our regular beta tester, and somehow his machines, even though they get loads of betas slammed onto them, are working better than mine, which is why we're running late. How are you doing today, Simon?
I'm fine, mate. I'm fine. And talking of betas, I just installed a new beta on my phone, 11.2 point something beta 5. But
we're really inspiring our guests this week, aren't we? I mean, normally I get the intro right and done about 2 takes, but this time it's if you've got a drink, David, now is the time to start taking it.
Oh, I just stiffened it up a bit, so I think we're good.
There was a joke there to be made, but I didn't make it.
Thank you.
Right. So what we like to do, David, when we have a guest on the show such as yourself, I always like to throw a little bit. My favourite question is, in all of your Apple gear, what is your oldest bit of Apple tech that you still use on a regular basis?
Yeah, I was warned about this, and I'm looking around the office, and I don't know. I mean, the oldest bit that I still occasionally use isn't Apple. It's Next. And I have a Next Cube that still works.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
Oh, nice.
It's a Next Cube with a mono display that still works, with a gigantic 600 megabyte drive. Ooh. So, yeah, that takes a little while to spin up, but it does still spin.
But that's a lovely noise, though, isn't it? That sort of thing. Yeah, the whole...
Well, and when the whole cube shakes, that the head is moving around and things, it's pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah, there is no dispute. It's like, like with your laptops, you put your ear to the keyboard to hear if it's spinning around. You never have that problem with these old hard drives.
There is no question. Plus, I mean, it kicks a lot of heat, so the whole magnesium cube gets quite warm as well.
Heats your room as well. There you go.
Yeah.
Free bonus. And I'm going to ask you here, Dave, do you remember how much you paid for such an item?
I remember that the hard drive alone was thousands of dollars, because that was an upgrade from the optical drive only to the optical drive plus a drive, and I bought that. I think that cost probably $3,000 or $4,000 for the drive.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah, that definitely hurt. But that, back in the days of Usenet, that machine was my old company's mail endpoint for UUCP. So that was my old company was called Underwear, and we had UW as our host name, and so that was the UW site, and all the mail would come into that.
I've never actually used a Next machine. I've seen one in the National Computer Museum. I always lusted after one. I've been a Mac user since the days of System 6,
Mm-hmm.
so I remember the adverts for the Next Cube, which tended to be a black cube on a desk with a vase with a red tulip in, and not much more. But technically, I understand they're fabulous. I've watched things about the Next Step operating system, and of course, if you watch those, if you dig them up on YouTube, there is one with Steve, I think, demonstrating all the things that the Next Step operating system can do, and you can see that at the time it was streets ahead. It was, and you can see how OS 10 is basically built on the Next.
It's very, very much Next Step. I mean, there's obviously a bunch of little differences, but in general terms, Next subsumed Mac OS.
Most definitely. I mean, you can see things there, the tool shelf and the dock and the whole.
Hey, the Unix underpinning itself. I mean, Next Step was built on the same exact kernel and everything else that all this other stuff is. So, and the operating system and the programming languages, Cocoa, comes straight out of the Next. So it's very, very similar. And it's amazing how forward-looking the Cube was at the time and how forward-looking Next Step itself was, even though it wasn't terribly successful.
No, it wasn't massively successful. In many ways, I think it was ahead of its time, Next Step. I think that one of its biggest problems, well, apart from the fact that it was a shockingly expensive system to buy into.
Absolutely, yeah.
Was that I think a lot of people were, I don't understand what all this is about. I don't understand why we would need all these features. But yeah, it was forward looking. I think Apple and Next were looking, as they like to say, where the puck was going to be. And they definitely did that.
Although the puck that they thought that they were going to have was, you may not remember the initial pitch, but it was that universities were going to buy these and each student would walk around with their own world on an optical disc, which you would then stick into any of the Next systems that were scattered about campus. And all of a sudden it would boot up everything that you had. So you didn't have a laptop, you just had this little disc that you would carry around. And that was not a vision that we were skating towards.
No, perhaps not. Although, of course, now in some ways we are, because everybody's talking about how your phone is the hub of your digital life. And, that's why there are these people experimenting with these things where you drop your phone into a system and expand it into a full-blown computer.
Oh, you're on the Microsoft Continuum train there, aren't you, where you can literally just drop it into a dock. But that's been around for ages, though, that sort of device where you can drop it in. Yeah,
it's not a new idea. People have tried it many times. I think the thing is that now we are perhaps reaching the point with where computing is becoming almost ubiquitous enough, and the power that's available in a smartphone is actually more than adequate for a large percentage of the population.
And that's why you, Mark and I, are all sitting straight in front of our phones and not using computers at all right now.
Well, the thing is, I would actually do the podcast on the phone. It's just lacking the ability to be able to record. I haven't worked out. I know some people have got some really complex mixer setups, but I really haven't had the time to sort of look into it, because looking at the iPad Air 1, which is what is that my oldest bit of kit? No, I have an original iPod with the clicky wheel.
Oh, I have that in the basement as well, yeah. Back is still shiny even.
Oh, you can tell it's never been used. Well, that's what I've also got. I think I've actually got one of the first touchscreen iPods as well, if I go and have a look hard enough. But now I've completely lost the point of what I was driving to.
Recording on a phone.
Yes, there we are. See, so welcome to the Super Duper podcast. We should just give you the show notes and let you run with it, because you couldn't have done any worse than us. No offense, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, even like, one of my stories I like to tell is when I had an iPhone 6, a 6S and a 7 all in one go, and I just did I took a bit of video and I just whacked it into iMovie and exported it. And it's a generational gap of a magnitude where it exports it from like a minute to 45 seconds, then down to 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. The device we have in our hand is there. It's just it doesn't quite do what I want it to do. But then again, that's the whole point of a generic device. It never is going to. I do remember, however, working many years ago in a shop called Dixon's, which is one of those horrible high street retailers that whenever you buy.
I've been to a Dixon's, yeah.
Oh blimey! Sorry to hear that. Did they try?
Sorry.
Did they try and stuff you on the insurance, which was their whole business model?
They always do.
And I'll never forget a guy paid £325 for 4 meg of RAM.
Wow.
Yeah, well, no, I remember that sort. I remember back in the day where that was, you would expect to pay £60-70 a meg at least, maybe 100. RAM is one of those things that's just gone as it's.
It's like a commodity now, isn't it? Like a trading commodity.
But that's because as computers have gone from being something fairly exotic to something that's in everything from your toaster to your microwave, RAM manufacturers are just churning it out by the bucketful, and that's just the economies of scale.
Well, we have such a hunger for RAM at this point too. I was thinking of the first computer that I bought as in my first company was the original IBM PC, believe it or not, and that with the 64K of RAM and a monochrome display, and I don't remember how big the hard drive was. I think it was a 10 megabyte hard drive. Was almost $12,000, and that had less storage in total than a Raspberry Pi that you can buy for $499. And less computing power as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Those Raspberry Pis are a nice bit of kit. I just wish I had the wherewithal to actually sit down and want to use them. Well, I suppose really, as we've got a guest on the show, we should actually talk about who you are and what you do. So now you've never listened to the show. Quite frankly, I don't blame you, because I sometimes go, "Oh Jesus, this was a bad one." But for those regular listeners out there, they know that I am fastidious with my backup. So really, I don't need to know anything about this. But for those people not like me who have a regular backup and inscrutable in their backup prowesses, tell us a little bit about SuperDuper.
Sure. So SuperDuper is a backup program that we wrote and came out with originally in 2004. And the general idea for it was to make the process of backing up as comprehensible as possible to most users and as simple as possible for most users. So what I did is when I designed it, I tried to make it so that it would explain in English everything that was going to happen to you when you press the copy button, and that the interface was as minimal as possible, even though the power of the program was pretty extensive. So it's actually just got about 6 buttons on the entire UI, apart from some of the options. And you just have to click a couple of buttons and it will make a full backup. And what's cool about this style of backup, at least, is that you can start up from it. So if your internal drive on your computer doesn't work, or your entire computer lets all the magic smoke out the ports, which is bad, you can take your backup to a different Mac or buy a new Mac and plug it in, and you're up and running extremely fast. So that was the general idea, is rather than back in those days, people were using Retrospect a lot, and they might use Retrospect to tape drives and things. And recovering from a Retrospect backup could take days, just because you have to pull out all the tapes or all the floppies or whatever you had and shove them into drives and hope the catalog didn't get corrupted. And with this, you just sort of boot right up and up you come. So that was the general focus of the product.
Yeah, I remember very much because Dave's selling himself slightly short here. I can't recall if SuperDuper was the first OS 10 cloning solution or not, but if it wasn't the first, it was very, very close. And it made creating a bootable backup really easy. And, it was just fabulous, because you're right, the other technologies available that most people would have been using at the time were things like Retrospect and a couple of others. But really, those make archives, don't they? Rather than they don't make bootable backups.
No,
If
they
your
make
machine
a proprietary style of backup. Yeah.
No, if your machine dies with something like Retrospect or one of the others, you have to get a new machine, install the software, set up your user account, and then, effectively pull all this stuff out of an archive. So don't get me wrong, Retrospect is a brilliant product
for sure.
for making archives. I believe we use it at work to make backups of our work. So all of our work is kept on the server, the actual files, the actual PDFs and InDesign documents and so on. And that server is then cloned to another identical server, and then once a week the backup server is retrospected to an archive. So because we believe in and because I've hammered it into my my management team above me, if it's not backed up 3 times, it's not properly backed up, because you can always get a perfect storm. So we have the server, we have a time machine of the server, we have a clone of the server, and then we have a retrospect archive kept off site, in case the whole building burnt to the ground. We could recover our work, because in the end, the hardware is replaceable, the operating systems are replaceable, the applications are replaceable. The one thing that you hold that is not replaceable and would bring your business probably to bankruptcy if you lose it is your data.
In fact, the comprehensive backup strategy, I think, is worthwhile, not just for businesses, but for individuals.
For everybody.
I couldn't agree with you more. I really could not agree with you more.
Yeah, pity you don't take your own advice then, Mark.
I'm looking at Super Duper. That's got to be a step in the right direction. I've heard of Super Duper. I keep thinking, you know what? I must go and give Super Duper a try. It's just, yeah. Well, what more can one man do?
You should do, because if you download Super Duper, even if you never pay for it, Dave has set it so that even if you have the free unlicensed version, you can make a clone of your hard drive.
And in fact, it never expires, so you can continue to make clones forever, and it comes with support, because I'm a masochist. So,
and the only real restriction on that is if it's unlicensed, you cannot use the much faster, I don't know what you'd call it, differential clone or whatever.
We call it Smart Update, and Smart Update is it doesn't erase the drive first; it only copies the changes.
Yeah, if you have the unlicensed version, you have to do a complete new clone every time, which obviously is
so it's not an incremental job.
No.
So just having a look through it now, and again, I know this sounds like really unprofessional. I haven't looked at it now, but I also think it's always a good experiment to get someone on who's actually done the software and can guide me through. So, for example, let me give you a scenario here. Yeah, my 2015 Mac server is slow as a dog. Now, I want to back it up, but I don't want to back up everything.
Sure.
So what would be, if it's sort of like for me, I know that I've got a load of downloads, a load of cruft, basically it's just a few areas that I want to exclude. What would be the best way to do that?
Well, let me ask you a question. Why do you have them if you want to exclude them? Because if you're not backing it up, you're willing to lose it, cruft or not. So since disk space is cheap, you should be backing the entire thing up. If you don't want to back it up, then just delete it. It's not that you can't exclude it, but I really discourage people from excluding things for that simple reason. It's like, if you didn't want that data, you should delete it. If you want it, then you should back it up.
And that sort of brings me right. And basically, it's a load of downloads of, should we say, TV shows that I've legally watched, should we say?
totally understand, and you should still back it up, because do you want to have to download all of those legally watched TV shows again?
It's the fact that I'm very tight and haven't got any spare hard drives, if I'm honest with you. That's why. That's what the plan was like, right, have I got any hard drive space? No.
We do have. I do encourage you to spend the $50 or whatever that translates to in pounds these days to get
about
a new hard drive.
£50, give or take.
Yeah. But yeah, so you can do this. It's we do have something called copy scripts, and scripting is sort of a overly freighted term. It's really just a matter of adding a couple of folders into a list and then using that and telling it you want to exclude. So it's quite easy to do. And in fact, I step you right through it in the comprehensive user's guide, which is 60 pages long and mostly pictures.
And when I've used Super Duper, I mean, it does have a full, although on the surface, like all good software, you know, if you're a beginner, you've got a few buttons and it's like, I want to copy this and I want to put it there and I want it to be bootable and, you know, I don't need to exclude anything. And that's the surface. But below that, should you want to do, you know, right, I don't want to back this up because it's junk and I don't, all that power is there as long. And of course, I should mention, of course, that one of the most important things that all good backup software does is it's what's the word? It's oh blimey, gonna have to cut that bit. It's you can timetable it, can't you? What's the word for that?
Schedule.
That's
yes.
I went completely blank. Yes, of course, because you can schedule it, and all good backup software should allow you to schedule, because then it's fire and forget, and it will either prompt you or automatically do that backup for you without any user intervention.
We have two different types of scheduling too. We have both a time-based scheduling, and we have another schedule where you can back up when you connect a drive. So if you just plug in your backup drive, you can have it pop up, it'll do the full backup, and it'll even eject the drive when it's done. So you can just plug it in. Once it's finished, you unplug it and you put that on a shelf or in a safe or in a safety deposit box.
Yeah, which is, of course, that mode is really useful, of course, for laptop users.
Yeah.
Because you know, if you're on a desktop and you've got a NAS or a hard drive just, you know, connected for Time Machine or clones or whatever, which is what I do at work. I have I have a hard drive on the back which is partitioned into two halves, and the Time Machine goes on one partition and the clone goes on the other. But for my laptop, obviously at home, it's not permanently connected. So what I do is I plug my hard drive in, and up pops the little thing saying, "Would you like to do your, you know, run your clone now?" And it's yes, please update my clone, and that's job done.
Yeah, it's important for people to remember that. I want to emphasize that disk space these days is relatively cheap. And one of the problems that people often have is that they will pile all of their backups onto one drive. So as you said, you know, you have Time Machine on one partition of a drive and bootable clone on another partition. The problem is that when you lose that drive, so all drives fail, including backup drives, you'll lose both of your backups. So your Time Machine is gone and your regular backup is gone. So,
which, of course, at work is why we then also,
absolutely,
you know, it's all that stuff's all shoved across to the server as well. And then, as I say, cloned yet again and then retrospected. But yes, you're right. And but drives are cheap.
Yeah, and there's also services like Backblaze, which are great. So what I always suggest to people is that they use Time Machine, Super Duper, or a similar product, your choice. I really just want people to back things up. If you don't want to use my product, that's fine, but please back up. And then something like Backblaze. So you've got a cloud backup, a local backup that is time-based, so you can get back something that's 3 weeks old potentially, and then an immediate recovery style of backup like Super Duper. Although in the newest version of Super Duper, I don't know if you've seen the 3.1 version.
Yes, I have, yeah.
Yeah, we now allow time-based recovery when your backup drive is formatted as APFS, which is pretty cool for those users on High Sierra.
Yep, that's good.
Have there been any challenges of updating to support APFS in the world of backup stuff?
Oh, master of understatement, Mark. Oh, no, I can't see how a whole new file system could create any challenges at all for backup. Yes, in fact, planning and executing a plan against a new file system is extremely challenging. The biggest problem that we had wasn't so much supporting the new file system, which we had a general, it is virtually undocumented, but it's supposed to be semantically equivalent to HFS Plus. So you would think that it would be easy. But what we were mostly concerned about was coverage on all of the different types of systems and setups that people may have that interact differently now with the new APFS. So we did something that we basically never do. We did a public beta when 3.0 came out. So when High Sierra was released, we released our first public beta on that day. And then we did about 7 additional betas as we pushed it out to many thousands and tens of thousands of people who were all trying this out on their own APFS setups so that we could make sure that we were confident, no matter what our internal testing plans looked like, that we didn't push it to the entire community until those kind people who were willing to run beta software, which I believe we have one of those on the line now, the obsessively beta. So once we had that coverage and we made sure to handle some of those unusual edge and corner cases, then we released to everybody, and that's worked out super well.
I think the thing with doing betas is it's addictive. Mm. You know that you're treading on the bleeding edge, but once you get into it, you just can't. It's like, I must have the newest, best stuff. I need to know what's coming.
That and sounds so much like a scene from The Deer Hunter, though, and that went quite poorly.
But I do, and I guess, yes, it is addictive, but I also enjoy it because when you do find something or you've got something to say, you can feel that you're giving something back to the designers, to the producers. You can say, look, this is, I can see why you did this, but it's not working for me. Or, if I do this, then that happens. And of course, in some respects, you do need some wide beta testing because people, might be running all sorts of weird and wonderful other products. The gamut of applications out there for the Mac is vast.
Yes.
And, you have people who are into music production, or people who are doing video, or people who are databases, or people who are doing, mostly online communications. And so you can get this is where you get things. We're using Wire. It's not the most well-known voice over IP product. So, not that I'm saying it would, but this is where beta testing will bring out, when I do this, if I've got Wire open, and I'm not, this is a purely hypothetical, but, my super duper crashes. These sort of things that you wouldn't come across in internal testing because nobody can have every app in the world and try out all the combinations.
I am pleased to say that I actually have a super duper backup happening right now, and it has not yet crashed. So
no, I'm sure it wouldn't, and I'm not suggesting for one moment. What I'm saying is that wide beta testing does find those little corners, those dark nooks and crannies, and those strange edge cases where weird things can happen.
In fact, one of the kind of cool things that we put into Super Duper many years ago is called sandboxing. And that was focused on the test community that might want to install a new version of the operating system. But one of the problems, as I'm sure you've noticed, is that as you install new versions of the operating system, sometimes they say, okay, now you just need to go back to the old one and do you want a fresh install? And if you've been doing any work, all your data is now in this, in essence, unsupported configuration. So what sandboxes let you do is share both your installed applications and your home folders with a new install of the OS, so that if you wanted to roll back the operating system to the previous build, all you have to do is reboot to the original drive, which is pretty cool.
Yep, that's a very handy.
Well, you're obviously passionate about the whole backup situation. So what was it that inspired you then to think, you know what I want to do? I want to have the responsibility of helping people back up their software. How did it all come about?
I'm so tempted to just say drink at this point, but I guess that would be the wrong answer. You know, a lot of it had to do with over the many years that I started in this general business in 1983. And I'd been dealing with people and configurations for a very, very long time. And one of the things that I definitely saw was friends, relatives, acquaintances, people who I was doing business with. Not that they didn't have the best intentions for backing up, but they just didn't seem to be doing it. And part of it was that they just couldn't understand or follow a relatively simple backup regimen because the tools available were either inconvenient or incomprehensible. They would end up in situations where they were having failures and they didn't know it. There was a whole pile of issues that seemed like they were relatively easy to solve. And part of that is a software solution and having something that's well designed, that's relatively easy to use. And part of it has also been a support solution where I answer personally every single email that comes in about this. There's not a crack team of support specialists. It's me spending all day helping people with their data. And at some level, that is also something that I think is important, where you have someone who you know is going to be there to help you out when things go wrong. And the thing about drives, and whether they're SSD or spinning drives, it's going to go wrong. It's just, that's why we back up. It will happen. And if you're not technically savvy enough to be able to recover on your own, it's nice to have someone there who can act as your potentially minor data loss counselor while they get you back going again. So in some ways, it's a way of me giving back to a community that has, given me a great career.
When Apple came out with their whole iCloud backup doodah and all the proliferation of online backups, did that sort of have an impact on your business at all? Because obviously now it's all in the cloud, or has it sort of been the people that know about backups know about this program and it doesn't overly affect you too much? How has that shift been in the last sort of year or two?
In fact, I would suggest that things in the cloud don't somehow make things easier. In fact, I was just dealing with someone a day or two ago where he had all of a sudden iCloud had deleted all of his contacts on him, and they were just gone. And he called up Apple, and Apple's like, "Well, they're not here. We don't have them," because they're not backing them up. Sure, the data may be in the cloud, but it's also, of course, cached locally, and they had no way of getting it back for him. But fortunately, he had a super duper backup, and by simply booting to that and then exporting the data from, it was his calendar, exporting the data from his calendar and then importing it back in on the other side, he was able to recover. So the cloud, it affords in some ways more opportunity to lose data. And so it's still incredibly important to back that data up.
And the other thing, I think it's important to make clear about having a clone, be it from SuperDuper or Mike Bombic's Carbon Copy Cloner and probably other products, is that the thing with the clone drive is when you plug it in, it's just exactly that, a mirror of your hard drive. So you can go into it and it's, you navigate through it through the Finder just like any other drive. There's nothing weird or wonderful. It's not like trying to look in your, if you go into the Time Machine, what you've got is a load of weirdness, which, unless you understand how that whole hack is put together, it is. Even Apple admit, because of how they wanted to make Time Machine, it's a bit of a dirty hack. And that's part of what APFS is about, of course, which eventually I'm sure they will use that to improve Time Machine. But the thing with a clone is it's just another hard drive, isn't it, Dave? You can go in there and navigate through the Finder and find the thing that's lost or corrupted or disappeared and just drag it out across the Finder. You
Yeah,
don't
that was something that we thought was incredibly important, is that the storage mechanism is entirely non-proprietary. It is just a drive, or even if you're doing a disk image, the image is a standard Mac OS file format. We write normal data right into that image, and you can recover with SuperDuper. You can recover individual files with Finder. You can even recover with Disk Utility itself and restore something using Disk Utility. So the idea was to try to make it, you're not locked into us in any way. You can update and restore the backup. So if ShiftPocket went away tomorrow, which it's not doing, but if it did, all your data is perfectly safe and available as it was before.
Yeah, exactly. That, this is why I have a thing. I constantly, a bit like you, and at the Mug, there's me and a couple of other guys, and we like bang on and on and on. Do a backup, go buy a drive. Time Machine is great, but go and get a cheap drive. Use SuperDuper or Carbon Copy Cloner or one of the others. I'm not particularly familiar with any of the others, but something. Do something.
Yeah,
please. Because we still get people come in. I've lost all my pictures. Well, where were they? They were on this external drive, and what's happened? The external drive is busted.
Yeah.
Right. And did you have a backup? No. And of course, photographs. In the work environment, I was talking about data. For home users, photographs are pretty much, they're the irreplaceable data that you really should back up.
Well, and financial records as well. People often have a lot of financial records on their computers. That's actually it brings up an interesting point. We get questions all the time about how often should people back up, and the period you should back up at is actually really easy to determine. It's the number of days of data you're willing to lose.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't mind that a week's worth of data was lost, then you can back up every week, and that's fine. If you don't mind that a month's data will be lost, then you can back up every month. But I certainly, and probably you certainly, wouldn't want to lose more than a little while's worth of data. So that's why having multiple strategies works well, where you want a full backup every day, which is your clone style backup, and then you want a time-based backup perhaps every hour, which is your Time Machine style backup, and then maybe an instant backup, which is what things like Backblaze are doing, where it's actually trying to back things up as they change. So multiple strategies, none of which will cost you a lot of money, and they'll save your data, which you will be grateful for should the inevitable happen, which hopefully it won't, but it will.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and everybody who's worked in computing for more than about 6 months knows it. There are only two types of users: those who've lost data and those who will lose data.
Well,
I'm both.
I disagree, because I have not, knocking on lots of wood here, I have not ever lost any data, and I've lost drives, but not data.
Yeah. I guess back in the day when that was the thing, that was when people were really talking about drives. But
yeah.
Drive failures even now still happen. In fact, Mark will know, not long ago, we did a show, and at the end of the show, I said, "It's all right, Mark, I'll edit it." So I saved the file onto the desktop. I went into the kitchen to cook my dinner. I thought, I'll come back after I've had my dinner, I'll edit the show. I came back to my Mac, tapped the space bar, and I got the flashing question mark.
Oh.
My hard drive had died silently in the time it took me to cook my dinner.
It wanted to be fed, and you did not feed it.
Feed it, yeah. Well, actually, when it went away to be repaired, they told me that the connector cable was fried and had completely burned out. So they put me in a new hard drive and a new cable, obviously, and sent it back to me, and it was fine. Of course, I did have a clone backup. I had my clone backup. But they also sent me back the old drive telling me it was no good. So I thought, well, okay, I'll just check that. So I put it in, I've got a little wallet enclosure that you just pop it in with a cable, and I plugged it in and it was fine.
Nice.
So bonus.
Free drive.
I'm not sure I would trust it 100%, but it's handy for, and yet another backup. But yeah, but that's it. Drives can just go like that. I had no problems with my machine. It was working fine, and then it wasn't. It was just dead.
And that's also an interesting thing that people will often think that they should like if a drive becomes unreadable. So we've all seen that situation where a file, you can't read it from the drive, and people will often think that that file is somehow abstractly corrupted, like it has bad data, it's formatted wrong or something. But that's not at all what's going on there. What's going on is that the sectors under the file have failed.
Yeah.
And the reason that the file can't be read is because the drive is literally failing. So I always encourage people that once their drive starts to fail, you are lucky that you had an indication, an early warning of failure, and you should get that drive replaced right away.
Yeah.
Because again, it's cheap to replace that drive. And do you really want to wait until you have a catastrophic failure?
Yeah,
it's just bad.
And they do tend to go, if I ever get one that starts playing up in that sort of way, this file can't be read, then it's, uh-oh.
Yeah, that's time to bin that drive without a question.
Yeah, that's, this one needs hitting, salvage what you can, hit it with a hammer, and send it to the recycle. So.
And one final question from someone who obviously does a lot of backups, like on a daily basis, like yours truly. If you've backed up I'm just in Super Duper here. If I've backed up my hard drive to a Super Duper backup, I'm going to assume that I can then just open that backup and pull out any files that I want from it just by mounting it.
Yep.
That's exactly the point.
Awesome.
That is exactly the point, and it will be bootable if you want to boot from it. Plug it in. Boot with the Alt key held down, choose that drive and boot from that one, which is always a handy thing to have should you get a problem with your Mac. And sometimes the only way to run drive utility or whatever is to run or boot from another drive. So
yeah, remember that recovery, the new magical recovery partition, that's on that same drive. So if your drive dies, you can't run recovery. So having an external backup program, an external bootable backup, lets you actually start up from that backup and then run disk utility to do repairs or whatever.
There is no undenying your passion for backups, and what could have been a very, very dry topic is actually been riveting. But that being said, we will come back to Super Duper in the show. We can chill it a little bit more. Shall we do some news for the world of Apple? Did you want to join us for some Apple news, or did you want to actually go and enjoy and do something sociable on the Sunday?
I'm more than happy to join you for the news.
Excellent. Well, what we'll do then, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll head over to Nemo's hardware store, and then we'll be right back to go through the latest week of we've actually got some Apple news. So we will be right back.
We received an extraordinary guitar here at Nemo's hardware store. It's called Fusion, Fusion. The website is fusionguitars.com, FUSIONGUITARS, fusionguitars.com. The cost in the U.S. is $1,000 as a $100 special during the holidays, so you can get it for $900. It's a premium guitar for intermediate and advanced guitarists. It's an electric guitar with a solid body. The body is black. The neck is available in a maple, a clear, pale, whitish maple, which is the one I received, and also a dark rosewood color. It's a 6-string guitar. It has an amplifier and speakers built in, so you do not need to connect it to an external amp to make a sound. It's a medium volume, and I'll demo it before this episode is over. Has a very good action, comes with the strings on it. It includes a beautiful traveling carrying case with a handle as well as straps for a backpack. Includes an extra set of strings, a really nice full quality leather, very sturdy shoulder strap because the guitar is heavy. Electric guitars are heavy, and add in the amp and the battery because it is a rechargeable battery, and that makes it even better. Very good website. Have a look at it. Just been reviewing it for a couple of days. The final review with pictures and sound samples will be at mymac.com in a few weeks. If you are a guitarist or know somebody who is, this is an exceptionally nice product. It's a little heavy, so you don't want to wear it for more than about 15-20 minutes at first until your neck and your shoulders get used to walking around the room while you're standing up. But I can personally recommend this. I'm planning on giving it a very high rating at our mymac.com website coverage. Fusion Guitar, strong Nemo recommendation, and I hope to stock a lot of these at the hardware store, because while people are picking out their other cables and accessories, you never know when they might just want to walk out with a $1,000 electric guitar that has an amp and speakers built in. At the other end of the price range is an Indiegogo campaign cable. It's called the Charby Sense, CHARBY SENSE, Charby Sense, world's smartest auto cutoff cable. What that means is it stops charging. It has a sensor in it to know when you're done charging in your car or in your house, wherever you happen to be, in a hotel room, school, work, lab, Starbucks, wherever you happen to be charging it. It's currently in an Indiegogo campaign. The campaign's goal has been exceeded, so this product will exist. You can get the early bird price, $19 each, or 2 for $38. That's the USA price. Simon & Mark will provide UK and international links, if they do exist, for the Fusion guitar and the Charby cable. The cable I received is wrapped in a very heavy-duty fabric wound, and there is a really, really durable plastic and metal tip both at the lightning end and at the USB end. So have a look at the Charby Sense cable and the Fusion guitar, and I'll be back next week with more exciting stuff from Nemo's hardware store. Okay, I'm putting the Fusion guitar case here on the bed. It's a really, really nice case. Unzipping it, taking the guitar out, putting the really sturdy strap around my head, getting that comfortable. Turning the power button on the bottom. It does also work with an amplifier. I tested that, and it works great with my amp. And there's 2 knobs on the front, one for the volume of the speaker, and the other to work with the 2 pickups that are here. That's the sound unamplified. Let's turn the volume up here. Okay, that's a quick introduction to the Fusion guitar, and it's got a lot of punch in the sound, and you'll be hearing a lot more about it and from it in the future.
Cheers, John, for yet again another fascinating Nemo's hardware store. And of course, you'll find all of the links over on essentialapple.com, or hopefully in the chapters. If you pick up your device, and depending what app you're using, you should see a little link there with the Amazon logo on it. And if you tap on that link, that will take you through to Amazon, where we get a very, very small amount of commission for whatever you make, and whatever you buy, and it all goes into the running of this podcast. Right, so we're going to cover some news then, and it's actually been a bit of a week for news, really. Apple have released yet more updates and betas. Simon, what have we been able to look forward to this week in terms of updates and betas?
Well, there were several updates, some security updates. There was a new beta for iOS, as I said. There were betas also, I believe, for Apple TV and the Apple Watch. I don't dabble with those. And there was, I believe, a new beta. I can't remember what number now. I've lost track. In the middle of the week, there was a new High Sierra beta as well. So basically, there were betas available for everything over the course of the week.
Awesome. What about you, David? Are you on a beta channel at all? I mean, obviously, you're the king of backup, so do you?
I am on all of the beta channels. Yes.
Oh, that's just masochism in its entirety.
I did say at the beginning I was a masochist, and no, I do quite a lot of testing, and it's very important, obviously, for developers to stay on top of whatever's coming out. So I have both machines on the regular mainline versions, and I also have a number of machines on the betas as well.
Cool. I don't these days. It's bad enough just trying to get something to read and write from a disk in my Mac server. So I think I might be going, Amazon, can I get a hard drive in time for Christmas?
Answer, yes, they can.
Yeah, as I was saying to Dave, the thing with betas is they're kind of addictive. If you get into it, you kind of get hooked on it. Just being ahead of the curve.
It's nice also to be able to participate. I mean, it really is not just addictive, but you have an opportunity there to sway a product slightly in the direction that may please you more. So that's a nice thing.
Yeah, very much so. Or just to feel that you're participating. You know, if you find a bug or a piece of feedback you want to give, you know, you just feel that you're giving something back, I guess. You know, I do enjoy that, even when things go wrong. And of course, with betas, as we were saying, you know, no one can have every app, so there are always nooks and crannies that a beta can expose.
Yeah, and as a developer, I can certainly say that I think all of the development community really appreciates people who are willing to take a risk on running a beta. It helps not just produce a better product, but it helps us do a better job.
Awesome. Well, I suppose really we're sort of rattling through these because the machine that has been tested to work at an operating altitude of 30,000 feet has been released because Apple has begun selling the 4,999 27-inch iMac Pro with 8-core CPU deliveries arriving the 27th of December. So fair place to Apple. They did their little trick again of saying, yeah, we'll be shipping at the end of the year. Right.
You'd always know that is the end.
Is this a machine that interests you at all there, David?
It looks like it's a magnificent machine. I don't know whether what it really seems to be targeted at is people who are doing a lot of video work. The amount of data that you can pump through this machine and the amount of fast rendering they can do with both good GPUs and good CPUs is pretty tremendous. So whether they price performance for regular development work versus the regular 5K iMac, which is what I actually do my development on, it's hard to justify for a couple of additional fast seconds of compile time. So probably not, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's a great machine. I think it is. I just think it's for an audience that is not necessarily me.
Yeah, I think I'd concur with that. I mean, as Mark knows, I recently got an upgrade to the 2017 27-inch 5K iMac myself at work. And I do graphic design and pre-press work because I work in printers. And that's a fabulous machine. And I looked at this iMac Pro, and it's a beautiful machine, and it's super powerful, and it does all these. But would I be able to justify that sort of money for what I do? No, I don't think I would. I don't think it would bring anything more to the table, if you know what I mean. It would be total overkill. And as you say, it's designed for a specific audience who do specific things, whether that's, you know, game development with a lot of 3D rendering, whether it's videos, special effects, that kind, you know, animation. That's the kind of target market very much. And other than a few people who are probably flash enough to buy one just to show off, I don't, you know, it's not aimed at the mainstream at all.
Which I think is a good thing. You know, having a pro machine that's aimed at something other than the mainstream, it should truly be a pro machine. And I think unlike the previous Mac Pro, which again was a sort of magnificent piece of engineering that was skating to a puck that was not actually headed towards a goal, this one I think is much more in the mainstream pro market. The other one was sort of looking at people who needed multiple GPUs that were doing a lot of GPU calculations. And I don't think that market ever existed. It was a bet on a future that didn't occur. This one, I think, though, is really going to make a lot of people happy, just not me.
Yeah. You know, it's a lovely machine. I mean, there's some criticism because it's a completely closed system. You've got to decide up front how many cores you want and how much RAM you want, and that's it, because it's kind of practically welded shut, and that's the end of it. And you will run it until it dies.
But that's been the